Got a coaching search going on in Columbia. Been doing, I can't even count it now. I've been doing so much radio in Carolina this week, and I've also been told to stop calling it Carolina. There are directional names on the front for a reason. So, South Carolina is what I'm talking about. Coaching searches are always fun for obvious reasons. They can be very, very tense if you're involved, but we get to sit over here on the sidelines, so to speak, and we can just kind of analyze from a safe distance. I want to remind you, because I didn't say this the other night and I meant to, be very wary of candidate lists and hot boards and all these things, these up and down, stock up and down, and so is got the momentum right now. Just be careful with that, because a lot of folks are getting played, not just in this coaching search, but any coaching search. Agents are extremely good at what they do. Coaches are extremely good at leveraging. It's an art form. It's as much an art form as calling an offense or defense. And some folks flat out get played. So what I am telling you is, take everything with a grain of salt, or malapropism of the day, a grain of salt. Malapropism of the day is something I'm heavily leaning towards doing in the off season. Malapropisms are a wonderful thing. Wonderful, wonderful thing. And if you don't know what one is, look it up after the show. But I got a whole list of them on my iPhone here, Josh, about a mile long. And those of you who know me well already know a lot of them. So don't allow yourself to get played by someone who's getting played. There are a lot of candidates that are listed out there that are not a candidate for anything more than getting themselves an extension and a raise and leveraging the South Carolina job opening to do it. So with that in mind, I want to talk about a few guys here. Hugh Freeze. I have flip-flopped on him a little bit, which is fine. I did it with my SEC East pick this year. I'm doing it with Hugh Freeze. I have not flip-flopped on my opinion of how effective he would be in this job, or any job, really. I have flip-flopped on whether I think he's the right guy for South Carolina. Now, I don't know that he would take the job. I don't know that. I am not privy to those conversations. But when I told you the other night, I want a supreme evaluator of talent, I think Hugh Freeze checks that box. The uh-oh factor, I think he checks that box. I need the dream job factor. I need a guy who views South Carolina a couple of notches above just being a rung on the ladder for you to ultimately get to a destination job. I got to have it be a destination job for you. That's why he's not off a list for me, but he has been knocked down a peg or two for me. Now, I spoke to someone close to Billy Napier in the past couple of days, and I don't think this is any kind of breaking news. It's obvious. The dude is a serious candidate for the job. There's interest there. You don't have to have any source or connection whatsoever, I think, to pick up what a lot of folks around the program are putting down. And there's a chance he checks every box. The ones I've talked about here, there's a chance he checks every one of them. However, the million-dollar question, it seems to be, and this is where I want to insert our buddy J.C. Sherbert, and the guy's doing, again, a great job over at thebigspur.com covering this entire deal. I won't call it a fiasco or drama. It's a coaching search. Here's the million-dollar question. And this is going to be one that I'm probably going to talk about for several shows in a row now. How important will the voices of former players be in this decision? And there are wildly varying schools of thought out there about how this should be handled. Some people would tell you, I'm not going to take a side on this. Some people would tell you former players are former players for a reason. They're not athletic directors. They are not search committee members. They're not search firm members. They are former players. They're just that. They've never made a hire in their life in most cases. Not in all cases, but in most cases. So it's great that they're emotional and they're passionate and they're invested. It's great, and we'll listen to them, but we're not allowing them to dictate where we go in this coaching search. The other side of that is they are what make this program. They are the lifeblood. The passion and the spirit and the blood, sweat, and tears that they invested, and they gave everything we asked of them. We absolutely owe it to them to not only listen, but we need them involved in this program. And so it stands to reason they'll be most likely to be involved if we heavily lean towards the candidate that they want to hire. So I say all that because there's a name that's been surging here as of late. And this is where I go back to the Big Spur. Sherbert has talked about it over there. I've heard a couple other people talking about it, and that is Shane Beamer. I was way out on him initially. I was way out on him for a very obvious reason. I was doing radio with Mark Ryan and the guys at ESPN Upstate just a few minutes before I walked in the office today. We're kind of tossing this back and forth. And the sentiment out there for those who are not in the Shane Beamer camp is, well, he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. Well, of course he doesn't. Doesn't have a whole lot of head coaching experience, doesn't have the resume necessarily that would convince you he's the right guy for the job. He's not going to. He's not going to have that. But two things can be true at once. It can be true that he doesn't possess the resume that would sell you on the concept that he's the right guy for the job. That could be true. And at the same time, it can be true that he's the right guy for the job. You don't have to look very far in that state. I know you guys are tired of the Clemson comparisons, but I mean, who in the world looked around, even after they had hired Dabo Swinney? Clemson fans. Who looked around and said, yep, that's the guy I would have selected. That's the guy that's going to lead us. You watch, 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to be taking down Bama in a national championship game. The year after, we almost beat them the first time we faced them. Then a couple years after that, we're going to beat them again in a championship game. We're going to have multiple national title appearances and multiple championship wins under this man. How much head coaching experience did he have? Not a whole lot. Coordinator experience. How much coordinator experience did he have? Not a whole lot. So the point is, you and I could never have known that about Dabo, because the only way you could know if he, or modern day now, Shane Beamer, the only way you could really know if they're the right guy for the job, well, number one is to have a very, very firm grasp of what kind of football man you need. Number two, to have been exposed to him and understand if he possesses leadership intangibles and tangibles, leadership characteristics. Number three, what kind of evaluator and developer is he? What kind of recruiter is he? What is he like in a closed one-on-one setting, in an interview setting? What kind of vision has he cast for the program? What has he sold me on, if I'm Ray Tanner, that will never leave this room but has totally convinced me he's the right guy for the job? All of these things are things we'll never be privy to. But the fact of the matter is they could happen. They could be happening. And so you could see a hire made here that doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface. They don't have to make sense. They don't award wins for press conferences. They award wins when you get it done on the field through 4 quarters and overtime if you need to, but your number is bigger than their number on the scoreboard. That's what they hand out wins for. Nothing else. So I know it'd be great to make a big splash. The splash is not necessary. You just got to understand how to swim. There is a benefit here from them being very decisive, them being South Carolina. Do you notice how much attention is on Columbia, South Carolina right now? Everybody's talking about it. Everybody. Because they're operating solo. They made the move. They didn't try and cut off their arm with a butter knife. They made the move. Graphic, I know, but I think it serves the purpose metaphorically. They made the move, and now we're in mid-November, and they're the leaders in the clubhouse for essentially all these candidates. I would imagine they probably have twice the volume of candidates approaching them, or representation or back channel means approaching them, as you would normally, just because in a normal year you'd have several jobs open. And maybe we end up with that this year, but we haven't so far. You would be very surprised. I want to be careful with what I say here. You would be very surprised at who is interested in this and how many people are reaching out. Anecdote, someone reached out in the coaching world to me today about this job. And believe it or not, as of 7:28 on this Thursday night, I am not on the coaching search committee. Maybe I should be, maybe I shouldn't be, but that's irrelevant to the point that thus far, Coach Tanner and company have not put me on the search committee, and yet I was reached out for, and I was asked, hey, what you know about this? Hey, what you think about that? And so, I assume if people are reaching out to me, they're reaching out by the dozens and dozens and dozens to Ray Tanner. Now, my final thought on this before we move on is I certainly believe Billy Napier is, if you want to call him a leader in the clubhouse, I certainly believe he's a leader in the clubhouse. I also believe, and this is backed up by what JC said on the Big Spur earlier, I think it was yesterday, he said this, I don't think this process is nearly as far along as it's being made out to be. See, a lot of folks have a radio show to do every day or a column to fill every day, and it gets old to just keep saying, well, still got a long way to go. We're still early in the process. Eventually, you want to see some forward movement and some traction, and there is probably behind the scenes, but I'm just telling you, I don't expect something to pop over the weekend, shall we say. I really don't think that's happening. I think they're going to take their time, do it right. They know if they get it done right this time, then they could set themselves up for the next decade. So let's hope that's the case.